Today I'm going to be talking briefly about Chapter 3, the ABC model of crisis intervention. I know some of you are farther ahead and some of you haven't started, but I'm going to keep talking a little bit as we go along about each one. So if you hear any background noise, no one's being harmed. After I get the kids to bed, usually the cats go a little wild, so you may hear some interesting noises, or they could go to sleep. You never know. Those who have pets understand. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the ABC model of crisis intervention because it's all important to what you know and learn about this topic. So the ABC model, of course, is a method of conducting very brief mental health interviews with clients whose functioning level has decreased following a psychosocial stressor. That's the book's definition. In the field, it's a way of doing things that is respectful to the client, that really concentrates on establishing rapport and really focuses on basic attending skills. Let's stop there. Why is establishing rapport so hard in a crisis situation? I did read the board. I've been reading some of the things you've been discussing, and you make good points. I think one of you stated that you had taken a foster child to a counselor that just, it sounds like, had terrible attending skills and really did not focus on the client, the foster child, at all. I think we've all been in that situation. How many of you can nod your head to this, have been in a situation where you were at the doctor and they had a terrible bedside manner? I certainly have. And you don't want to talk to somebody who really doesn't seem that interested in you. If they don't look at you, if they walk past you, if you feel like patient number 1356 instead of yourself, it doesn't feel good. And it is the same when you go to see a counselor or a social worker or a crisis worker. Now I want you to turn it around in your head. You yourself are the social worker, the counselor, the crisis worker. How would you do that differently? Let's say you were the counselor who is seeing their 7th or 8th person for the day, and you need to pay attention to what that person is saying, but it's really a challenge for you. You don't want to be a bad counselor. I would say most people that have a difficult time establishing rapport and have a difficult time with attending behaviors really don't mean to. I've done it myself. You're in a stressful day. I've been at the jail seeing my 4th mobile crisis in a row. I have to assess if that person is suicidal or not. They're making jokes. I'm making jokes. We're trying to, get down to business. I'm trying to establish rapport, trying to have good eye contact. With the jailers knocking on the window, asking me, seriously, aren't you done yet? With the client jingling something in his pocket that probably isn't supposed to be in there, and we're locked in a room together. And this is possibly a dangerous client. I tended not to get all the information I noticed before I'd go assess them. And I'm trying to pay attention to his body posture. I'm trying to have my body posture be straightforward, looking in his eyes, being very respectful and polite, yet asking really difficult, deep questions about how he's feeling. It's a really challenging field, crisis intervention. So honestly, I have had struggles with this, and as have most people in the field. Times I've been better at it, and as time passes, I think you learn a lot of the skills that you need to know. So for those of you who have been kind of emailing me, oh, it seems a lot to learn, I think that any type of new theory, any type of new technique seems overwhelming at times. But if you practice it, the more you talk, the more you practice these things, the easier it will get with time. I would just pay attention to the conversations that you're having at home. Pay attention to the conversations that you're having at school or at home or at work. Do you have good eye contact? I think most of us are not aware of when we're looking away. How is your voice? Do you speak clearly and concisely? Or do you talk a lot, and you tend to run out a little bit and you get a little bit off topic? This is not the end of the planet, by the way. It just means that it may be something you need to watch out for. Are you someone that has a hard time with open-ended questions? Do you ask people yes or no questions more easily? Just something to be aware of. Especially in crisis, these things can be very important. If you ask someone a net yes or no question, they may be less likely to answer your second open-ended one. I challenge you, those of you who really want to get good at this, to do the exercise on box 3.1, Basic Attending Behaviors Exercise on page 52. It basically says break into groups of 3 or 4. Use the basic attending skills evaluation sheet. Rate each other on attending behaviors. I think you could do this one-on-one. Pick somebody that likes you, because you may want to redo and redo. Pick your spouse, pick a brother or sister, pick a friend. One can be the client, the other can be the crisis worker. If you choose to be a third could be the rater. Otherwise, your spouse can probably rate you at the same time, I would imagine. After this exercise, have some fun exaggerating an interview in which the crisis worker does not employ these behaviors, has poor eye contact, is cold, keeps arms folded, does not pay attention. This behavior will impress on everyone what not to do. I think many of you have seen what not to do in your personal situations, in your personal lives. You've probably been once again to see doctors, counselors, social workers, dentist. Perhaps there's a store clerk that growled at you or didn't say hi, or there's some examples of really good attending behavior at Quick Trip or perhaps at the movie theater. So think of those good examples also. Another thing discussed in your textbook is paraphrasing, and this is something that can be difficult to do because you don't want to parrot back exactly what they've said, or you're going to get that weird look like, well, I just said that to you. So try to state it in some different words. The focus is on the factual part of what they said, and it kind of encourages elaboration. So there's an exercise on box 3.2 on page 56 that you may want to try. It says, choose a partner and ask a third to be an observer. I think your partner can also observe. One person plays the crisis interview and one plays a client in crisis. I think these things are important when you're on an online class. It's easy to think, oh, I'll just skip it. But then you're kind of missing the in-class experience of practicing what you are learning. It says do not parrot or repeat exactly what was said. Sometimes it's helpful for the counselor to break out of the role and tell the observer in the third person what he or she heard the client say and kind of practice it. And I think that's important. Okay, now is the tough part. So you've already established rapport with your client, perhaps a suicidal male who has come to the crisis center looking for help from you. But now you have to identify the problem, and that can be much tougher than you might imagine. The individual may have multiple problems, or they may not really want to talk about it, but they came there because they needed help. So now you really have to use basic attending skills, but adding therapeutic interactions to try to get the person to feel at ease with you enough to talk about what's really going on. I think it's important to be relaxed when you're identifying the problem. Your intensity level will affect the client. I know you're dealing with serious issues at this point, serious challenges. Suicidal ideation, i.e. suicidal thoughts, can be very serious. However, if you start barking out questions because you're nervous, or if you are too intense or too worried looking, the person might not be honest with you. So the book talks about asking questions. The book talks about asking simple questions like, what happened to you? There's a way in your voice that you can use, be non-judgmental, and simply ask what's going on in a caring manner. I think that's very important. You wouldn't want to tell some of your most difficult times to somebody that seemed to be judgmental or who was simply barking questions. I really like that they brought up recognizing the meaning or perception of the precipitating event. If you're working with a 13-year-old, for example, a simple breakup online with someone they've never met may be all important to them. or a bunch of friends tweeting something embarrassing about them from a party might be the end of the world to them. So you kind of have to understand and recognize the meaning or perception of the event to them without judging that, because what is a crisis to one is not a crisis to another person. Unfortunately, I have seen people released after an incident was not perceived by a treatment team as being terribly serious, and then the person either attempted or succeeded at suicide afterwards. I mentioned online. I think that I worked crisis at a time where people didn't understand how important online relationships were to people and online communities were to people. We certainly have seen a lot of suicide attempts after breakups that have been online relationships only. I have seen suicide attempts and due to all sorts of embarrassing moments and photos put online and things like that. So I think we were quite behind the times in the mental health community to understand the importance of these events to people. And so not just identifying the problem, but understanding what they meant to someone is really important. Last, I'm going to talk about coping. I think the most important thing is to really explore the client's own attempts at coping. Many of the people that you will work with had some successes in the past, and quite frankly, they know their successes better than you do. They know themselves. And sometimes it just takes asking a few simple questions to get them to remember, oh yes, I've quit drinking in the past, or oh, I used to have a great job, or I've been able to cope with so many things other people would fall apart over. So I think this is very important. You as a crisis worker or social worker or psych tech are going to suggest many other alternate coping behaviors. Perhaps they want to quit drinking, but they haven't been able to. You might suggest support groups. You might suggest therapy. You might have other agencies in mind. One of the best things that you can do is either have a binder or a folder on your computer, or if you're one of those great ones, just knowledge in your head of many of the local resources. You are as good as the people you can refer to most of the time. You won't be everything to everyone. So if you have a working knowledge of the resources in your community, you're going to be such an asset in the field. It's amazing to me how many of the people in the field really know who's working where and are aware of where you can get food or shelter after midnight, or who will take clients without insurance. All of those types of things are huge assets. I hope this has been helpful for you. I really want you to think about, if you were working in the crisis center, if you were working in the ER, if you were working as a counselor with a person in crisis, how prepared do you feel? And if you're not feeling prepared, I really suggest that you practice some of these techniques. Look up videos on YouTube. Really kind of follow up with this process until you get more comfortable. Your internships that some of you have are really going to help this also. I think it's hard to practice these things and then and not be in the field. So an internship is kind of like dipping a toe in without all of the responsibility. So I wish you luck with this. I'm sure all of you can learn these techniques. It just takes some time. Anyway, take care and make sure that you either email me or contact me in some way if you have questions or concerns. Take care.